So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this last webinar of the Future Resilience Project, which is the launch of the Future Resilience Policy Roadmap, which is at the very end of the project, a way to summarize the learnings and the core outputs of the project. I am Matias Barberis. I'm the project coordinator, and I'm a researcher at Epicenter, Policy Research Lab based in Brussels. And today I'm sharing the floor with Ifigenia Potaki, in charge of the knowledge valorization at the DGRTD in the European Commission, Evangelia Petrido and Jürgen Spar from NTNU Social Research from Norway, and Kerstin Kuhls from Fraunhofer EC in Germany. So this will be our speakers today. And without taking too much time, thank you all for taking the time also today for being here with us. And I will leave the floor directly to Ifigenia.
So many thanks, Matthias, and good morning to everybody. Yes, indeed, it's the end of the year and it's also the end of Future Resilience Project. It has been, I have said that in the past, a very special and very unique project for us because for two reasons. First of all, we only had one project under this topic. We never repeated the topic, so it is unique for its approach and for what it is doing, especially this approach of bringing experimentation to knowledge valorization and also working with citizens and bringing research to society. And for the second reason, because it was one of the first projects we had in knowledge valorization, and it has been really bringing forward this new paradigm of knowledge valorization, going beyond the knowledge transfer approach, and bringing together many different stakeholders, working in a way of collaboration, of co-creation. And this is exactly also what this project, working with citizens and bringing research results to policy making and society. So let's go to the first slide. I just want to say just a few words about knowledge valorization. I'm sure, having been in this project for 3 years and more, you know all about it by now. But just as a reminder, let's say that knowledge valorization as a policy approach started around 6 years ago. And at the moment when the Commission created this unit of knowledge valorization, there was not a common understanding yet what is knowledge valorization among the member states. So let's say that the first phase of knowledge valorization policy was really about the definition, was about creating a common understanding, about developing guidance, how people can do it better. And this is from 2022 to 2024. The main, let's say, outcome of this period was the common understanding of knowledge valorization among member states, which is implemented in the guiding principles for knowledge valorization, which is a council recommendation. So this defines what knowledge valorization is meant in Europe, across Europe. And then based on that, the Commission also developed concrete guidance, how to do it better, how to strengthen, how to make it more effective, faster, for different groups of stakeholders. So for example, when working with citizens, when dealing with the management of intellectual assets, in industry academia collaboration, and in the area of standardization. So this was, let's say, the first period of knowledge valorization policy. And now we are in the second period. And can you please, Matthias, go to the next slide? So what happens in the second period? Okay, already from the first period, what I said, these policy initiatives about the definition and the guidance were already part of the European research area policy. In the second, let's say, phase that we are now, knowledge valorization continues to be a very important element of the European research policy. And there are a number of activities in the current, let's say, policy agenda of the era from until 2027, which are exactly about knowledge valorization. So, for example, how to strengthen intermediaries, how to improve the access of intellectual assets, especially about responsible licensing. So, licensing also for with societal dimension, strengthening the valorization of strengthening the capacities and skills, and of course multidisciplinary research, also the role of the social sciences and humanities, which sometimes is being forgotten, and finally how to measure the value created and especially the societal value. Now, can you please go to the next slide, Matthias? So, on the other hand, apart from the being part of the European research area policy, knowledge valorization is becoming an important element in the innovation policy. And this year, in 2026, let's say we are already in 2026, there will be the adoption of a European Innovation Act. So a legal framework which will aim to create the best possible conditions for innovators to choose Europe. And knowledge valorization is a very important aspect on that, especially because it is about bringing the innovation to the market. At the same time, it will be an important element of the forthcoming European Research Area Act, which will be about establishing the fifth freedom of free movement of research, innovation and knowledge, and reducing fragmentation in the European Union. Already now, this year, the Commission adopted in spring the startup and scale-up strategy, aiming to support startups and scale-ups, also as part of Choose Europe. And in this strategy, knowledge valorization already plays a key role, with actions that are expected to be implemented in 2026. And these are in particular a blueprint for intellectual property, capacity building for technology transfer offices, and something also new, which is supporting the roles of venture builders and creating these roles in universities and research technology organizations. So really about helping the startups to connect with other organizations, with industry, with investors, and so on. At the same time, it's the Charter of Access to Research and Technology Infrastructures, which goes further to the charter that already exists about the research infrastructures. And this will be about how companies, especially startups and scale-ups, can better access the services of technology infrastructures. Now the next slide, and I think that's the last thing I'm going to say. Okay, so last week it was the adoption of the Horizon Europe Work Program for 2026-27. And just to highlight some of the opportunities for funding and support of knowledge valorization activities in the Horizon Europe program, which are currently open. our topics are in two parts of the work program. The one is about industrial technologies, and the other one is about widening and the European research area. So on the industrial part, which we call cluster 4, we have three topics: proof to market, which is about small innovation, small grants. It's an innovation action, small grants to support proof to market, proof of market concepts. The second one is about enhancing industry academia knowledge exchange in social sciences and humanities. And perhaps this could also be interesting for the consortium members to check out. And finally, it is about unlocking the potential of academic intellectual assets for industry, SMEs, and startups. So the assets which are in universities and are not being used. Now, in the widening and the European research area part of the work program, we have a very interesting topic, which is a coordination and support action about supporting startups and spin-offs to test and to test their solutions with societal actors, with citizens, to get feedback from end users, from consumers, but also from other industrial partners, and with this to improve their solutions. Uh, and also this topic aims to provide methodologies and best practices how to do better this kind of societal engagement and testing of innovations. The second one is the European Citizens Hackathon Champion, which is a European level competition where the needs of citizens are driving the co-creation of innovative solutions and which takes place at the member states and then finally at the European level. So for any questions you might have, I would be happy to come back to you. I think Matthias can forward me anything that you would like to ask. I know we don't have a lot of time now. You can also contact us in this address, and I would encourage you to check the knowledge valorization platform and to subscribe to our newsletter so that you are always informed about our activities. So I stop here and I look forward to listening to your results and to the policy roadmap.
Thank you, Ifigenia. Thank you for this walk through the knowledge valorization policy. Especially, I think that was a longitudinal way to see from the past to the future, from where we are and also where the new calls and topics are moving forward for the next couple of years. So thanks a lot. And now we move on to the results of the project. Basically, we sum up everything in this policy roadmap that is has been already published today, just before this webinar. So you can all go to the website of the project and download it. You will find it under the news section of the website. It's highlighted right at the top part, so you will find it very easily. And the roadmap actually is a product that could be read in two ways, actually. So on one side, you can read it by understanding how we tested knowledge valorization across the project. But on the other side, you can read it in terms of societal resilience and the learnings that were drawn from implementing one policy area into one concrete challenge, because this is actually what the project was doing during the last 3 years. The project is under the knowledge valorization policy area, but we decided to apply this approach into the topic of societal resilience. So at the end of the project, we have two level of results, one on the policy side of knowledge valorization, and on the other side on societal resilience. So all that we work in 10 future resilience labs all over Europe that they were working with different challenges, and they were working actually on poly design. So the knowledge valorization mechanisms that we identified are contributing to enable and facilitate policy uptake, as you can see in the image. So I don't want to repeat a lot about this, but knowledge valorization actually for the policy making is important, as we can actually use and transform and add value to data, know-how, and research results. And this is important for policymakers because they evidence can actually influence and inform policy making in different ways. And this is something that we have learned, how the different actors were actually getting together and what kind of evidence they were using, what kind of tools they were actually using in the different settings, because the labs were actually working with different topics from climate change, health, labor market, social integration, etc. So even in a wide variety of topics, they were actually experimenting with policy design. And this is actually how policy experimentation comes to the scene, because it allows governments to test new strategies in a more controlled way, trying to reduce the uncertainty, but also encouraging systemic learning. So that means that for us, working also with resilience was a good way, because resilience means that we don't know when potentially the next shock, crisis will happen. So applying, for instance, policy experimentation and working with future-oriented methodologies, as we will see in a couple of minutes, help us actually to better experiment with potential policy actions and how these actions could actually fit in different type of possible futures. And we will arrive to all this in a couple of minutes. So at the end of the project, and this is something that we will just make a walkthrough here about the different aspects of the policy roadmap, but we don't going to give you all the details so you can actually read it. But we created, learning from the activities of the labs, 4 archetypes of knowledge valorization. That depends on what kind of evidence was used, what kind of level of analysis, or more or less data, more practice-oriented was used, if it was also more top or bottom led, depending on who were leading the different processes. So even though our labs were facilitated, there were always some actors and some kind of practices in the process of policy design that were leading to these different archetypes. Just a very fast walkthrough. We have these four drivers of valorization. One is the typical scientific research translated into policy options. This is the expert-driven, and this is more likely the most associated with the science for policy concept, not exactly the same, but associated to, and this is right to say it, where the experts are actually contributing strongly to interpretation, validation, and synthesis of data. So here there is a lot of scientific evidence playing a big role here, and is usually led by intermediary organizations like high education institutions or research institutions. Then we have the data-driven model, which is basically using data by platforms, predictive models, or simulations, like agent-based modeling, tools of forecasting tools, or for instance, existing dashboards, like for instance, at the European level, the European Innovation Scoreboard, that are actually contributing to decision-making based on specific insights and usually with an iterative stakeholder input. Then we have the participatory model, something that we have tried probably mostly in the Future Resilience project, when policy design emerges from co-creation with different type of stakeholders, authorities, citizens. But they are combining not only scientific evidence, but also other type of knowledge, like local or experiential knowledge coming from the everyday practice of people. So there is a different type of legitimacy given to the policy design, where people can actually be more actively included in the process. And then finally, we have the practice-driven archetype that is actually a type of valorization where knowledge actually flows from networks and communities of practice, where there is a bit more of exchange between practitioners. This happened, for instance, in some of the labs where, for instance, technical staff from a local municipality were actually exchanging from different perspectives. So that's coming from a practice that is not embedded on scientific evidence, and it's not embedded in any policy document, but also it's not a practice that citizens may know. But this is something that comes from the practice of technicians or staff or practitioners working at different government levels. So there is an emphasis in the learning by doing, and here intermediary governance levels are playing a central role on how to get these practices from their everyday life. Of course, these processes are not exclusive, so they can also overlap, and sometimes they may touch each other, even though in the previous graphic you have seen that they are in different areas. This is just to situate them into different type of variables, but of course this could overlap in practice. The second focus that we have worked in the process is about societal resilience. So we have applied knowledge valorization. We selected a topic. Within our labs, we actually work with different challenges. So people were starting from a concrete challenge, and from that challenge, we're actually going through different steps to collect different type of information, process, and add more value in these different four formats to design policies contributing to societal resilience and future preparedness. So this is a very brief snapshot of what societal resilience means. This is something that we are talking as an intrinsic ability of a community to manage and adaptively respond to shocks and adverse events. Of course, in academic literature, we are talking about nowadays about transformation as a potential way of understanding resilience. So it's not anymore about bouncing back, but also moving forward to let's say, better future. But of course, resilience is a process that it is highly embedded into communities. So the sense making of actions, society, structures, values, history. So there is also a path dependency in the way of understanding resilience. And what we learn about this process is that, of course, each community have their own understanding of what resilience is. So we could always provide a definition about what it means to create a policy of resilience, but what was more interesting was to see how the people would define the future they want. And I think also the how is an important aspect here, because that also defines the process of what kind of evidence they needed for defining a policy. So we needed to start with one specific challenge, but also how this challenge may evolve in the future, and we will come into understanding what is the role of future thinking also in the process. But of course, in the how, we needed to understand what were the patterns of vulnerabilities, capacities, and potential impacts that could unfold in the future. So for all of these, we needed to get different tools, sometimes existing tools that were actually applied in a different context, and we reutilized them and adapted and tailor into new contexts to create a new policy. So that means adding value to the policy design. But also an important aspect, usually not seen a lot, is the who. So of course, no one size will fit all, and this is a clear aspect. And this is why we are pushing into whole of society approach as a result of the project. It is a collective process. There will be sometimes contradictory opinions and perspectives, but of course, this needs to be collated into a definition of resilience strategies. In the roadmap, you will see different testimonials from people of how they actually feel using different tools in the process of building societal resilience. But also you will have, and I think this is very much connected to the who, some reflection questions. And these reflection questions will contribute to these people to understand the different aspects that they need to consider, at least some of them, to design policies or to undergo the different steps of policy design, but divided into, if you're a policymaker, what would be the questions as a policymaker that you would like to do yourself, or if you are coming from the private sector or the civil society. Of course, after that, we did an analysis of all the labs and we came up with the resilience profiles. That means we understood what were the main dimensions of resilience that were predominantly incorporated, not a lot in the analysis because all of them were actually considered in the analysis, but mostly in the type of solutions needed to build resilience. So that's why, for instance, here it's very important because today we have a lot of projects and initiatives, not only in Europe, but around the world, talking about climate resilience, which is quite important. And here we only have few of the labs having a very important role in that area, while many of them understood that the social, economic, institutional aspects were actually very important to make a change into a more resilient local, regional communities. So these resilience profiles, you will find them in the roadmap. So you will have different labs used as examples of different approaches. And then you will have who the lab is, where it was located, and the main topics. And also you will have the profile. These profiles, of course, ended up into different ways of addressing the issue. For instance, we have just as examples here the multi-local lab that developed a tool which is a local tax calculator that could contribute actually to the economic resilience. But why in the profile you have a lot of institutional aspects here is because there is a need to get better data and more evidence-based data to, let's say, organize the provision of basic services to a population that is actually changing the living patterns in the territory. So this is why there is a very strong mix between economic and institutional data in the profile. If we go to the COSITE lab, which has been, for instance, working on social integration based in Germany, they have been working with backcasting and road mapping as two foresight tools. And they were actually working on social integration of women and young population into the labor markets. And there you have a very strong social component. But again, it's also linked to the economic aspects of the labor market and also the linkages of the need of institutions to actually make the correct decisions to create more robust policies in the future. So this is a bit of a snapshot of the two areas of how to read the roadmap. Of course, you will have the time to go through it after the webinar. Maybe just one slide from my side is the policy roadmap, even though it aims to be a guidance document for people to undergo processes. It also includes policy recommendations. Policy recommendations that will go into three different aspects. One of them is on knowledge valorization. The other one is recommendations in terms of how to increase societal resilience. And also we have extracted some examples of recommendations in these different 5 dimensions based on the resilience profile. So it's a bit more specific. Some of them that maybe is worth mentioning in terms of knowledge valorization, I think valorization sandboxes as a way of promoting policy experimentation is one of the most notable ones that is comparable to the regulatory sandboxes. But here we are talking about different kind of governance systems where actually, and is embedded with the other recommendations, the way of really integrating transdisciplinary knowledge, improving the capacities and embedding or equipping with the skills to the different organizations included in the policymaking process, but also strengthening the role of intermediate organizations that sometimes plays a key role in facilitating these processes. In terms of societal resilience, and I think here is the main learning for us, policy stress testing happened to be quite an effective approach for thinking about the future. It's not just there will be only one policy and that policy is we go blind into the future with that, but actually stress testing and thinking of, okay, there will be different possible futures. What would be the policies that would actually fit and how flexible we could be to change in case of need. So this is also a very strong adaptation strategy. And of course, it comes with capacity buildings, improved governance mechanisms, policy and investments alignment, etc., etc. So there is an invitation for you to read all these recommendations. And of course, these recommendations are not something that is a must do, but this is just recommendations. So of course, every context may have to tailor and adapt into very specifics. So going to the next session, I would like to invite Evangelia Petridou from NTNU Social Research, that she will take over. And well, there is just this slide, maybe just to make an introduction and also a bit of sharing for some new people that may be here. We have also produced a knowledge base that was also part of our testing. There's a knowledge base that was constructed with different policy instruments coming from research results and policy recommendations from international organizations that were tested in society. And actually, we wanted to see also to what extent a database like this could be useful for policy design or not. And there were a lot of learnings about these aspects as well. But Evie, I leave you the floor to continue with this session.
Thanks, Matthias. And you can leave this slide up because in the interest of time, I will speak out of my slides that I have on my machine. Thank you, everyone. I would like to provide just a political counterweight to mostly aspirational and technological terms that we discussed already. Evidence, knowledge valorization, and knowledge in public policy. And that stems mainly out of the knowledge base that we have produced in this project, that it's really provides a wealth of information for any kind of policy experimentation and also a source of information for policymakers who want to understand what has been produced in different projects. But at the end of the day, public policies are inherently political. And I don't use political as a dirty word here, but just to say that public policies is the result of competing interests, and it's the output of governmental action with, of course, non-governmental actors being involved in the process. So take, for example, what is happening now in terms of resilience. We can talk about resilience being based on ensuring that Europe's defense is adequately funded, or we can talk about climate resilience. Those are competing interests, and at the end of the day, there's scarce resources that have to be allocated to those different competing interests. So politics are part of public policy, and also using evidence in public policy. Also, policymakers are what we call bounded rational. So they have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of attention to allocate to all of these different interests and different evidence that comes into play. So evidence, as in scientific evidence, is only one out of the considerations of policymakers. Others include equity. They include contextual specificities such as culture, which also affects what's feasible politically and otherwise, what solutions are feasible for certain contexts. And of course, there is always costs involved that also fit into feasibility of a certain tool. So all of these things have to be taken into account. Evidence is only part of that calculus. We also have to differentiate between making policy and influencing policy, and that has to do with a degree of knowledge and evidence that goes into decision-making processes. We have to also understand that science is fallible and scientists are part of the policy community. And also what counts as evidence. We have scientific evidence, but as Matthias mentioned, we have other kinds of evidence, local knowledge, indigenous knowledge, and things like that. So evidence and policy in reality tend to be disconnected. And there's two extreme views. Politics is pathological and evidence cannot be in, or that inserting evidence in policymaking is simple. And of course, reality and the truth really is somewhere in between. We often talk about policy, public policy, in terms of a cycle. So we start with agenda setting and we end up with policy evaluation. So we formulate, we choose policies, and we implement policies somewhere in between. And the process is really quite messy. A good idea is to understand how we can insert sound evidence in this process in the best way possible. And I would like to connect to what Ifigenia was talking about before, that we really need to have social scientists and really public policy scientists in this process who understand the science of policy making. Otherwise, we gloss it over and the result can be either paying lip service or not being effective. A further consideration is emotions. So anger drives public policy, both in terms of what policy makers consider as a problem, and also how people respond to public policies. Boring policy making, problem-solving oriented policy making doesn't garner clicks, unfortunately. Policy design, as Matthias mentioned, is a way to imbue rationality in the process and try to keep politics at a level that is useful. It creates formal mechanisms for collaboration between evidence producers and evidence users. And it also encourages early stakeholder involvement in identified evidence, and also building ownership among a diverse amount of stakeholders. It promotes networks of actors and involvement of the policy community by trying to have a more linear process and a more considerate process as to where we are and where we want to go. Policy experimentation as well is a research method and a practice and a place for discussion. So all the labs in FutuResilience really worked as experimentation places and a way to try out different policy instruments. So I will conclude my short presentation, but we say that we as evidence producers, as scientists, we need to understand that problems and solutions are in competition for the attention of policymakers. We need to ensure that we produce evidence that is relevant and in a useful format, and hopefully that's what we're doing in the FutuResilience project. And we need to take into account the political, financial, and social feasibility of solutions, not just the one that's most scientifically sound, but we need to ensure that other factors are taken into account. And also we need to think of ourselves and we need to understand our role in the process. Where are we? How much are we arguing for something, and be really conscious of our own stake in the game. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelia, for this brief presentation. Maybe just a reminder to everyone, there is a button on question and answers, but also the chat function for those that may have enabled it. So you can make any question and then we will address them towards the end of the webinar. And also, I think connected to what Evie was sharing, there is a lot of specificities. So the roadmap, as such, is a condensed document with a really process information. But of course, in the project website, you also can access different resources that could complement this view, go into more specificities, and actually understand these differences also in the political context and how this was playing also an important role in the different labs. There is one report which is called Consolidated Report of Pilot Cases, where all the 10 processes of the labs are actually explained in more detail. Saying that, I would move to the next key connected resources, which is the toolbox for policy testing. That was also an important part of our project, and that was supporting also the go of the different labs. And I will leave the floor to Kerstin Kuls to tell us a bit more about this and the role of future thinking in the process.
Yes, the role of future thinking is not only making clear that we are in the here and now, but we also have to think in futures and on futures in order to support policymaking for resilience, because resilience does not is not only here in the here and now, but we also have to keep it in mind to adapt also for different futures. And we are therefore talking about different futures, possible futures, also likely and probable futures, and desirable and preferred futures. In this project, we mainly worked with possible futures and with desirable futures. But that also means that we also together, if possible, with policymaking, but also with other stakeholders in the fields, so with a very heterogeneous group, we have to systematically explore these different futures. So we have to be able and we have to be ready to think also unthinkable things. We have to challenge our mental models, and not only our mental models and assumptions, but also the mental models of policymakers or of other stakeholders. We have to think long term, and we have to train our thinking in being able to think long term. But we also have to come back to the here and now and to decisions to be made now or in the short term, medium term, long term future. That means we need backcasting, we need forward planning for policy making, and we need this not only for policy makers, but also for citizens, for all involved, and for companies. And we have also in these kind of processes to be prepared for these different things, and we have to be prepared for those events that may come or may not come. Means we have to navigate a lot of uncertainty. We cannot always reduce uncertainties, but at least this kind of preparation and this kind of thinking forward can lead us to a state where we have more agency, where we know what we have to do, also in policy making, or where policymakers can pave the way of being able to do that. And we had a lot of cases where this was really practiced. And next slide, please. And in the next slide, you can see there is one example of an exhaustive process. This is already a kind of roadmap, what was done, but this is a real case. That was the case of Immer. But we could grab into that box and have very different methodologies for doing these kind of foresight processes. And this is just one way of doing it and combining the different methods. And in this case, for example, you have a stakeholder analysis, especially at the beginning, but not only the stakeholders and the actors of the here and now, but also who could be in the future the stakeholders that are relevant. That can be completely different people, different institutions, different policymakers also in this case. And we can merge and we can combine very different methodologies. The methodologies are in the toolbox. The toolbox is available. They are there. For example, you can use a kind of systems analysis, steep L, steep V, combine that in a different way. You can search for weak signals. You can search for wildcards. And even in this case, they even included science fiction into these kind of new events or scenarios that might come. But you also can do scenarios, scenario building, scenario writing, and then test the scenarios. And also test the policies that are derived from these scenarios. And then, of course, you can filter this all into a roadmap, into a kind of way of forward planning. So road mapping, looking backwards and looking forward for different policy makings. And the tools are there. You can also use them. everyone is able to use them. They are not only supporting policymaking, they are also supporting citizens. Really, those citizens who want to prepare for something that might come or might not come. And some things are relatively clear that they might come at a certain point in time. It is always helpful if there are different participants, if we have different perspectives in that. But keep in mind, for resilience, futures thinking is a permanent task. It's not only done once, you have to do it twice, 3 times, and more often. And it's a task to keep an eye in and on the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Kerstin, for this presentation. And I think we are coming to the very end of the presentation, actually, but not before saying few more words about the roadmap. Of course, as we mentioned here, we have also decided to include a very brief presentation of the toolbox and the knowledge base, because these are complementary elements of the project. The roadmap actually is guiding everyone, different kind of stakeholders, into how to either influence or contribute to policy design, and also how to valorize knowledge in these different steps of the policy formulation towards more robust policies that are let's say future ready, if we can say that. So the invitation for you is to navigate the roadmap in a way that is, as Kerstin mentioned, is an iterative process. You will find in the core part of the roadmap 3 different sections. Some of them are under the letter A, some of them are under the letter B, and the other one is on C. That means the different steps that you can follow doesn't mean that you need to follow all the steps, but these are options for you. And this is all well explained, hopefully, on the how to navigate the roadmap at the very beginning. We are, of course, welcoming any comment, and we are open for any exchange also in the future. If you need more detailed information about how to properly use the roadmap, or if you want to learn more about the project. Just a few more words before opening the floor for any question that may be out there. The project website will be alive for a couple of years, so the knowledge base will be accessible, the toolbox as well, and also the policy roadmap. But of course, you will find all this information in Zenodo also after this period. So at least for you to know that all this information will remain alive for a longer period of time. And yeah, the project is coming to an end now. This is our last public event with the community. And maybe this is the moment to say this is a big thank you, not only to the people that today already presented, but also to a very big team that was behind. Actually, I never like to say behind the project, but actually in the front of the project, because they were the real main characters and protagonists of making this project possible. From the funders to the different labs that made things happen, but also to the many people outside in the different labs that contributed to the process and contributed to test different policy options in the local context. Some of them led to very interesting impacts. We have also produced an impact report, if you are willing to read that, on how the project were actually creating a difference in the different labs. So this is also an invitation for you to keep reading on the different resources that we have. But again, it's a big thank you to everyone that participated in the project and make it possible to give more learnings to the whole community. The project is not a project just to make an achievement for any of us, but it's actually intending to create a change and trying to create a little contribution, at least to improve both the fields of knowledge valorization, but also on the field of resilience and future thinking and foresight. So that's it from our side. We still have a few minutes to go in case there is any popping question from the colleagues. I see some comments there about the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint is just a snap of the roadmap, so we invite you just to navigate the roadmap. I think it's a more robust document than the PowerPoint. Yeah, if there is any question, this is the moment. And I don't see anything on the question and answer so far. Yes, Kerstin, please.
The biggest thank you goes to you, Matthias. You were really managing the whole process and all the actors that were involved, going into the different directions, all the policymakers. So really a big, big thank you for you also. So don't forget yourself.
Thank you, Kerstin. Thank you. All right. Given that there is no question, so again, one last invitation to navigate the project roadmap. And yes, I see. If Ifigenia is making a question, if the project website will remain also present for future developments on the different labs at local level. If you want to maybe expand.
Yes, no, I was just asking because now, the different policy labs, what happens next? For example, if something happens at the local level, how the policy update proceeds, will you also be able to report on that in the project website that you said will remain open? And also in relation to that, what can also the Commission do to give more visibility to this uptake in the next beyond the project, let's say, in your opinion?
Thank you. I think it's an important question. So we could always keep some news coming on the news section of the project. Of course, this is beyond the project timeline, but this is a small effort that could be done, at least for people to report how the different processes are moving forward. As we said in the impact report, there are already some outlines of different pathways that the labs are taking over. Like already, for instance, one of the labs is institutionalizing one figure that will work on the continuing the lab actually at local level. There are some also partnerships created with other institutions to collaborate and work on the process. This is I'm thinking about Germany here. There are some tools that are under development. Again, this is the French-German lab also that they are developing this Portland chart that is also quite interesting, and this is also moving forward. Well, with the Commission, what we can do is always keep collaborating. There is an ongoing collaboration right now, and this is probably an invitation also to keep it on the loop with the Joint Research Center. They are preparing an accelerator document which is coming on top of an already existing one, Navigator, in terms of adaptation and transformative resilience. And this is coming out, and they are incorporating not only our project, but also other projects. This is a bit more oriented to climate, but of course there are too many learnings that could be, as we were discussing, for instance, yesterday on a meeting, replicable to other contexts. And I think this is one of the main messages that we always wanted to convey with this project. You need to think also about different type of crises and challenges that may or may not come in the future. And there are many learnings that we can take from other experiences. And this is exactly how to valorize also knowledges coming from different perspectives. And I always like to make the example of how we all lived through the COVID period. And there were too many measures taken into account. Okay, how many of these measures we can learn, and processes that we can learn and implement in other sectors, not always when there is a crisis, but also how to make some of these learnings good for the everyday life.
Can I add
So,
something to this?
yes, sure, Ifi.
Okay. So also an invitation from our side would be to work together on bringing these practices from the policy labs to the knowledge valorization platform. So I think it would be very good to introduce this as best practices, especially when it comes to societal resilience, where we don't have a big portfolio of practices. So it will be really interesting. I think I can get in touch with you, Matthias, and you can coordinate this with different labs, or we can have another online meeting and discuss how to do this. It's very, very easy process. And then we could also have a clustering of this and try to follow up what happens for the uptake in the future from our own platform.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So it's a
absolutely.
commission platform, so it will enable the continuity and giving some visibility to these actions and inspiring others.
Absolutely. That's a great idea. So we can take it over together in the next couple of weeks, maybe next year, as we are close to the festivity period. All right, then I don't see any other question, but thanks a lot for staying during this hour. We're still on time. This is very good. So have, as I always like to say, remembering a person that is coming from my place, have a very, very good lunch for those connecting in Europe, and for those coming from other parts of the world, have a very nice continuity of your day, evening, and so on. So thanks a lot, and see you soon.
Bye.